Well, you're in charge of North America's largest pipeline energy infrastructure company, and you got pipes in Canada and the US and across the border.
Indeed.
How hard is your life right now?
Well, 43 states, 8 provinces, 5 countries. It's just another day.
It's just another day.
You've got to focus on fundamentals. What do we know? Energy's going to flow. It has to flow. It's the lifeblood of everybody's economy. Consumers want cheap prices. That means provide as much supply as economically possible and try to stay out of the way of policy and politicians in the short term and focus on the long term. And so we continue to do that. We've got $27 billion of projects that we're going to execute through 2027.
And any of that question marked, on hold, put on the sidelines, on pause because of the turmoil in the market and because of the headlines on tariffs?
No. And here's why. Well, they're already signed up contracts. People need that energy. It takes multiple years to build that infrastructure. Most of the product that we need for those is orders are already in. Say steel, for example, largely domestically produced in the United States or in Canada for projects there. So you do need to think 3 or 4 steps ahead. But when you've been around better part of a century in your long-term energy infrastructure, I'm paid to do that every day, and so are our people.
But does that building and all that CapEx get more expensive if the material gets more expensive?
It could. So we have to be, again, you try to lock that in as soon as possible. One of the benefits of running a large pipeline system, largely regulated, economic regulation beyond just, you can pass through some costs if they're reasonable. So again, big buyer, as you said, largest pipeline operator in North America. We buy a lot of stuff, and I think we've got a certain amount of power to be able to get the best deals possible. And then from a competitive perspective, if some prices have to be passed through, fine. But generally speaking, we lock those in.
Have you seen any change in oil flows as of yet?
No, quite the contrary. So January, February flows out of Canada have been close to record highs. We'll see if that continues, but I think people may be getting ahead of those. Exports out of the Gulf Coast, we're the largest exporter of oil out of the United States. That continues to be very robust as allies and customers overseas want to continue to get there. And it was a pretty cold winter, so natural gas was used predominantly to keep people warm and electricity going and industry flowing. So start to the year has been pretty good.
If we do see continued tariffs on Canadian oil, do you think the price then discounts and then producers respond in kind?
So our pipeline is exactly built for that. So it's been a long time been a discounting Canada, right? Lots of production, trying to get down to lots of demand here in the United States. So the more we can build pipelines, the less there are discounts. But we'll have to see how that shakes out. It's early days. I keep saying everybody needs to take a breath. Everybody needs to be focused on the long term and recall that our people, our economy, the two countries need each other and they need energy.
No, we're media. We want answers now. But what it does seem to highlight, though, is Canada's need for other export partners.
Yep.
And I'm wondering what the stomach is to build up pipelines to Western Canada.
I'm cautiously hopeful. I didn't say optimistic, but hopeful. For several reasons. One, going to be a change in government in Canada. One way or the other, there's going to be a new prime minister here in the next little while, maybe 2. We'll have to see. I'm not the politician here. And I think Canadians are united that, it's a challenge to be so tied to a single economy, even if it is the best economy in the world. And therefore, there's opportunities to move off at least the West Coast and maybe the East Coast. Canada did have an opportunity 10 years ago to be the leader in LNG and tripped over itself not to be able to get there. I think many Canadians probably regret that. I hope policymakers regret that. But, you make a mistake once, hopefully you don't make it twice, and that'll create an opportunity, and still will be the largest provider of oil and natural gas in the United States, too.
There have been things floated, like maybe the government could tax exports, and that would then pay for a pipeline, particularly maybe from east to west, that the government could just help pay for these kind of pipelines. Is that in the zeitgeist at all from where you are?
Yeah, I don't think that's not a logical way to go, right? I mean, the government had to step into a pipeline. The one that does go to the West Coast ended up being a multiple of what it would have cost in the private sector, one. And then 2, you would really be asking looking for a real burden to be placed on Western Canada as the largest producer of, almost the sole producer of oil out of Canada. I don't think a Canadian politician that's thinking about national unity would want to impose one tariff on one part of the country just to benefit another part of the country.
So what would incite the private sector to want to do something like that?
Well, new permitting rules, just like here in the United States and Canada.
Which is worse?
Well, they're both challenging. I don't know which is worse. I think momentum is towards regulatory simplicity here in the United States, and I hope we get the same in Canada. Again, I have to make decisions every day. Am I investing in Canada and the United States? So permitting is a big issue. Speed of permitting is a big issue. Support for proper taxation regimes, et cetera. Those are all decisions I have to make. Both capital markets are excellent, but I would say the permitting and regulatory regime is quite problematic in Canada.
The other sort of non-related tariff demand driver potentially is AI and data centers,
Sure.
right? How do you play in that?
Multiple ways. So we, again, being such a large producer or large shipper of natural gas, probably the best way in which those data centers will be fueled is natural gas-fired generation. So we are building pipelines now for great companies like Duke, TVA, et cetera, here in the United States, and those will be for new gigawatt-plus power plants. Some of those electrons, I'm quite certain, will go to meet this demand on the AI front. We serve 90% of the gas-fired generation, say in a province like of Ontario. They're trying to track more and more AI, so we will build the infrastructure, the storage, the transportation, et cetera, to fuel those plants, which will then allow the data centers to be connected. Something like the vast majority of data centers are within 50 miles of our pipeline. That's a pretty attractive, right across North America, for us to be able to utilize. So I'm excited about that. I mean, we'll have to see how it all shakes out, but steady growth. And we also have a renewable power business, and some of those data centers want to use renewable power. So we've signed up new customers like Amazon, and Meta, and Toyota, and Pepsi. So you'll see a lot of those players that are looking for power. We're going to need it all, Alix.
What was it like to have those conversations with like Toyota and Amazon? Like, did they contract long power purchase agreements?
Yes.
And what was that like to come to a price?
So the price is largely set by natural gas, even if you're buying renewables, right? So the price is out there, and then you're trying to create a little bit of an escalator. They see the need for stable 6-9s reliability power, but they also want to meet some of their sustainability goals. So
even now, in a different environment?
Absolutely. That means they will get a mix of gas, and they will get a mix of renewables as well, right? So we need it all. I think that's probably the message that comes out. North America to be Fortress America, North America to be energy superiority, we're going to need it all. We're going to need all the oil, we're going to need all the gas, we're going to need cooperation, we're going to need permitting reform, and that, first and foremost, is going to serve the consumer. Consumers are voters, and I think that wins.
Before we let you go, there's obviously a lot of concern about recession fears, among tariff fears, et cetera. Are you noticing any slowdown in demand?
So I am starting to see some impacts vis-a-vis housing. What's going to happen with interest rates, recessions, et cetera. If you're not quite certain about being able to afford a house or your job, et cetera, then, as many houses as we might need, they're maybe not getting built. But that's about it to date. I mean, I think we have to realize there's been a lot of talk of tariffs yet, but we've yet to see a month or two of tariffs. I think when that kicks in, you may see some impacts, which is the benefit of our model. Our model largely regulated, steady as she goes, dividend payer. We've increased the dividend for 30 years in a row, and met financial guidance for 19 years in a row. Recessions, no recessions, one type of government or another. So, yeah, we often see the stuff first, but fortunately the structures we have still allow us to perform.